Okay, so let's talk about Helen Mar Kimball again and again and again and again. you know, oh my goodness. So Saints Unscripted did a really short bio on her, which I think is a little too hard to do, especially when you're uncomfortable with it. And so it was like someone tried to throw him under the bus that was like probably just very young person went and tried to like fact check that, and they just kept quoting section 132 and saying there's no such thing as these marriages that didn't include sex, because it had to be children, it had to be children, it had to be, because I read section 132. Like, yeah, I read that too, but I've also like read a whole lot more than that, and so yeah, I've watched a lot of Fair Mormon. I've said that before, and I can't do them justice. I mean, they are real scholars. They are around records that I can't be around, but I can read things on maybe, Brian C. Hell's page. I might disagree with him on a lot of different points here and there, but he has his sources. That's how I found the Temple Lot case and knew what page it was on, and found that there were some words that made her sound like Emily had worse grammar than she did. There's just little things that can pop up, and someone else's own opinion can come up, but they explain that's why they have the Joseph Smith papers out, because instead of having to feed through like a historian's filter, be your own historian and read it yourself. You can read Brian C. Hell's books, or Richard Bushman, who says that the Relief Society was just to make Emma feel better. It's like, wow. But he has a lot of good information and good sources. Just had a hard time at times reading his book, but I'm still grateful for it. I did buy it and read it, but then I got through a few pages and went straight into, again, like I said, I want to read directly, so I recommend reading The History of Joseph Smith by his mother, dictated, but Emma Smith verified to her son Joseph Smith III. That's all correct. So it's a very raw, sad, funny, good story. And she does defend her son and say that all these vile things he's accused of, there's like no way he would do those things. Which spiritual wifery is vile. This one guy brought up Eliza R. Snow and saying, oh, but like these women, they all lied and said that they weren't plural wives, but they were, so we can't trust anything. No, they denied that they were not prostitutes, because that's what J.C. Bennett said, because I read his book. You can find almost all these books online with Google. It's amazing. But Helen Mar Kimball, she was almost 15 when she got married. Sealed married. She was called a wife, but it's in her poetry that she says this was for eternity alone. And was that a thing? Yes, it was. It was mirroring in biblical times. Mary and Joseph. Mary is kind of married to Joseph because she has to get a divorce before she marries him because she's pregnant. But she's not married yet. They can't live together. And they estimate that the age difference between Mary and Joseph was very close to basically Helen and Joseph Smith. But we don't believe at all. You won't find in Mormons that go ahead and read everything that Helen said and have read all these histories, that have journals of their ancestors that were Mormon pioneers, that know mass numbers of them were eternity only sealed to Joseph Smith or Brigham Young or any of these others. But I found this really good Fair Mormon, even though I've kind of mentioned, I just kind of have to hit this, sometimes I don't always agree with them. Like, they've criticized Rod Meldrum, and then Brian C. Hell's criticized Meg Stout, and some of these people that I'm like, whoa, that's some good points. Like, she might have been off on one thing, but also Brian C. Hell's is sometimes off on one or two things, It's a little, almost as harsh as this guy Nemo. He's almost kinder than we are in our own community, which is hard. So that's why it's also hard for me to come out with this, and why I'm like, have some trepidation with maybe coming out with the research about my photo, because I know it's like, our Mormon community, it's not always that nice, but it's not what this video is about. We're talking about Helen again and again and again. So Helen said in her poetry, I'm gonna actually just post it. I'm gonna find the link again. I researched all this like crazy several years ago, read all of her journals, and I am not at all convinced that she was a time wife. Why? Because Joseph Smith had enough bedrooms for all his wives to move in, and the time and eternity ones, the ones that spoke at the Temple Law case, they moved in, but they were over 18. And so this Fair Mormon thing that I watched explained that Brigham Young said, that Joseph Smith said, that you do this eternity only sealing, which Brian C. Hales and his wife talk about, which it's a very, all historians are finding this, that this was a thing. It was a thing, Nemo. It was a thing, Nemo. Okay? That they would be engaged with eternity only sealings, which were non-sexual, just like Mary ending up pregnant, but she's engaged, but sort of married, but not. She can't be pregnant though, because she's not married yet. Same with Helen. And so Brigham Young said, Joseph Smith said, you do that, but you don't do the time sealing, which is then you're married, move in, have babies until they're 18. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is just throw in analyzing Brigham Young and all of his wives, which I did tonight. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go through Brigham Young's rap sheet, I guess you could say, on Family Search, and go through all the wives that he ever had. And what is not differentiated at this is if they were eternity only, which happened a lot, and you're going to see it likely was a lot, but it doesn't really show that unless I click and dig, and I'm not going to, because he had a total of 51 women on here, and sometimes things aren't totally accurate on here. I'm being honest. I found some things, especially with some of the apostles, that, it just didn't, they are inaccurate things, because almost anyone can add something on here. It's just if you open it up and then you have a source, which usually is, a historical record of some kind where they would go around and count everyone in your house and ask your ages, stuff like that. If you're not familiar with Family Search, that's what this is. But I think they've locked his and some of the more well-known people. So anyway, Brigham Young, if you are new, not a member of the church, he was born in 1801, so he was about 4 years older than Joseph Smith. A little bit shorter than him. He died in 1877, so he was about 76 years old. And so out of what I found out tonight, and I've heard this before, and I just double-checked it, he, out of 51 wives, 16 of them he had children with, and then how many did he have more than one child with was 10. And you just don't know how many of those might have divorced him. Some of them that he had children with might have been like one child and then just hated plural marriage and asked for a divorce. And there was, I don't remember the year, but he did state, even to his own wives, like, on such and such date, we don't have to go through the complication of divorce. You can literally just say I want a divorce, and anyone in the state you tell them wants a divorce that isn't a plural marriage that just really hates it, just leave. Just leave. There's too many people that are too unhappy. Just leave and you'll be divorced. So there was a mass divorce on like one day, which is crazy. And I'm not going to say this isn't going to come off weird, some of these things, because so as far as young women, people say, all of his apostles married very young women, and there were 3. They were under 18. I think youngest was 15. But not a single one of them had children under the age of 18. I don't think any of them had children younger than age like 20, 21. But we're going to go through every single one of them. I'm going to try to go through them fast. It's so tempting to try to throw my theories and things like that, but I'm not descendant of them, so I just don't know. But it's interesting. His first wife of his choice was 5 years, just 5 years younger than Brigham Young. Marion Angeline Works, and then he was a widow by about 1830, and then he had 2 children, just brought his 2 children to Ohio and joined the church. And then he doesn't marry again until 1834. Marries Mary Ann Angel, and she's even closer to his age, just 3 years younger. And so she's, she's 31. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so Lucy Ann Decker was a plural wife in 1842. She was 20 at that time, and her first child that she had, she was about 23 years old. Susanna Snively was 27 years old in 1842. Her first child was in about 1853, and she was 38 years old at that time. Harriet Elizabeth Cook was 22 in 1843, and she's 25 when she has a baby. And then Clarissa Ann Decker, Clara Decker, she was young. She was 16. But she doesn't have her first child till she's 21. And so she sounds like she falls into that group that I've heard that Brigham Young was told that there was some quote out there that I'm trying to find, but everything that I've found on here today supports this theory. I mean, it wasn't a theory. Apparently it was an actual quote from Brigham Young saying that they would do these eternity-only sealings to these younger women, and it was an engagement. And that is common in the Bible. And so they were following the Bible. Just like Mary and Joseph. Mary was just engaged to Joseph, but it was more like being married because she technically had to get a divorce to not be engaged to him anymore. And so these eternity-only sealings, it's not physical until they get a time sealing, which apparently Brigham Young was told by Joseph Smith could not happen until she was 18 years old. And so there apparently are stories that from this video I watched a long time ago that women could just write a letter and say, I want my eternity-only sealing just canceled. I found someone to marry. In those 4 years, I'm waiting to turn 18 or something, or 2 or 1. They just decided, I just found someone else, and he would just be like, okay. Because it was eternity only, that nothing physically had happened. They weren't really married because it wasn't a time sealing yet. And so everything on here proves that. So again, 21, there's no actual child bride. So I think she probably didn't move in and get a time sealing until she was 18 and having a child at 21. Okay, Emily Partridge was married to Joseph Smith a year before this in 1843, 1844. She marries Brigham Young. So she was 20 in 1844. Her first child was at age 21, and she had a lot of kids. So I'm with Meg Stout on that. I just do not think she had abortions. People try to, especially all of the women in the Temple Lot case, they all had a lot of kids. And it was nasty, dirty tools, not having any knowledge of sanitation. Like, I don't know how they could even have a uterus back then after having an abortion. I'm sorry to get graphic, but seriously. And then Helen Mar Kimball, I'm going to pull that up in a second here, talked very harshly about abortion. So I don't think none of them talked in the pro about it. And there's no leaked story of any woman having an abortion that was with Joseph Smith. It's just not out there. So anyway, a lot of kids, like 8 kids. Clarissa Ross was 30 in 1844. First child was at age 33. Louisa Beeman was also plural wife of Joseph Smith, I think in 1841. But in 1844, she was 29 when she married Brigham Young. Never had any children with Joseph Smith, but her first child is at age 32, and she has several children. And then Elizabeth Fairchild was married at age 15, and she never had any kids, so she was young. So it might have been an eternity-only sealing, and I don't know her story. I might look it up later. Okay, and then she was a little bit older there, and then Rebecca Greenleaf Holman was 20 in 1844. So actually, I think I didn't write down all of the ages. So there was more women that were closer to 50, 60.
Anyway, she was 20 in 1844 and no children. Olive Gray Frost was 28 in 1844, no kids. Mary Ann Clark was 29 in 1844, no kids. Mary Harvey Pierce was 24 in 1845, no kids. Sophronia Gray Frost was 26 in 1845, no kids. Emmeline Free was 19 in 1845. She has her first child, age 21. Margaret Maria Alley was 21 in 1846, first child at age 25. Olive Andrews was 28 in 1846, no kids. Mary Elizabeth Rawlings was 28 in 1846 and no kids. Ellen Rockwood was 17 in 1846, so she was a little bit younger, but no children. Martha Bowker was 24 in 1846, first child at age 38. And you never know, like maybe the other wives kind of kept him away from the younger people. I just have no idea. But he's mostly having children with women in their 20s. Margaret Pierce was 23 in 1846. And then her first child was at age 32. And this is the guy that everyone makes fun of. And I find him on Pinterest because he would dress up like a lady and sing opera. So that was him. And he had some callings in the church. But Abigail Marks was 65 in 1846. No kids. Cynthia Porter was 63 in 1846. No kids. Phoebe Ann Morton was 60 in 1846. No kids. Jemima Angel was 42 in 1846. No kids. Rhoda Richards was 62 in 1846. No kids. Mary Eliza Nelson was 41 in 1846. No kids. Zena Diantha Huntington was 25 in 1846. First child is age 29. Mary Ann Turley was 19 in 1846, but no kids. Julia Foster was 35 in 1846, no kids. Mary Ellen de la something was 41 in 1846, no kids. And 1846 was when the temple was finished and dedicated, and so they were a lot of sealings. Like again, talking about non-sexual marriage type sealings, there is a story that I will try to pull up here, but they of like a boy and girl, 15 years old, sealed in the temple, but told that they could not be married until they got to Utah, and they were way older. But since they knew they were going to leave to Utah from Nauvoo temple was done. They knew that only in the temple could they have these temple sealings. And so it was kind of like, you're engaged, you're sealed for eternity, but they'll be married for time in several years. And that happened. Eliza Roxy Snow was 42 in 1846, no kids. She also was married to Joseph Smith. But even though she had no children, she lived with Brigham Young till he died. And he took care of her, loved her, had her run the Relief Society. So he wasn't going, oh, you're not going to give me any children and kick you out of the house and make you poor. And that didn't happen. He took care of her. And he loved her, so Amy Cecilia Copper was 42 in 1846 and had no kids. Abigail Harback, it's going to be a lot of this, was 56 in 1846, no kids. Again, I think this has a lot to do with the Nauvoo temple, just women being, I want exaltation if Christ comes next week. If I have my eternity only sealing, then I'll be exalted. That's what it was. That's why you have a lot of non-sexual eternity-only sealings. There's some kid trying to debunk, like, oh, I'm a fact checker, I know everything, but he knows nothing. Because he hasn't looked at the records, and he isn't a descendant of these people and doesn't realize that this is a real thing. Okay. Nancy Crissay was 66 in 1846, no kids. Namont Kendall Jenkins Carter was 25 in 1846, no kids. Diana Severance Chase was 19 in 1846, no kids. Jane Terry was 28 in 1847, no kids. Mary Jane Bigelow was 20 in 1847, no kids. Here's a young one. Lucy Bigelow was 17 in 1847. First child was when she was 22. Sarah Mellon was 44 in 1848 and no children. Eliza Burgess was 25 in 1852. Her first child was at age 26. So he seems to like mid-20s, not children, people. Mary Oldfield was 61 in 1852, no babies. Eliza Babcock was 25 in 1853, no children. Catherine Reese was 51 in 1855, no kids. Harriet Ameline Barney was 26 in 1856. Her first child was age 17, but now with Brigham Young. I think she might have had a child with Brigham in 1852, but I don't think that was even right either. So I just have to look through that again. It just is complicated. So 1856. Yeah, maybe 1862, but anyway, that just... Moving on. So her husband died. He didn't kill him or anything. He just died. Even though people accuse them of things like that. Harriet Amelia Folsom was 25 in 1863, no kids. Anne Eliza Webb was 24 in 1868, no kids. I think she's the one that was an actress and divorced him and talked about having her own apartment, and her mom lived with her and didn't get a fur coat and didn't get a new stove and was angry and just, I don't know, but she didn't have any kids with him. So I don't think anything physical happened, and she never said he abused her. She just didn't get stuff that... She wasn't the favorite wife. That's what she kept saying. Whatever. Mary Van Cott was 24 in 1868, but her first child is age 26. Again, we got these mid-20s, mostly mid-20s. Elizabeth Jones was 57 in 1869, no kids. And then Lydia Farnsworth was 62 in 1870, no kids. Hannah Tapfield was 65 in 1872, and no kids. And he dies 5 years later. And so not a single one of them had children before they were 20. Well, as far as plural wives go. So she was a little bit younger. That's his first wife. She dies, then he marries her, and then you from here on down are the plural wives. So you can look on Ancestry and see if I'm making this up, and you can click on the sources. That's what's great about this, is you can go click on a source and see actual old paperwork on stuff. And that's how I really got into J.S. Bibbins and his family, because that's what we are sort of commanded to do, to know about our family history and everything. Anyway, you can join that if you're a member of the church or not. It's super fascinating. Anyway,